Soul Mirror, where deep meets divine. I am your host Shreya, and today's guest is Ada Esquerre. It's not your typical astrologer. She is an evolutionary astrologer who reads the stars not for answers, but for remembering. Her take on love, wholeness, and emotional patterns feels like soul archaeology, raw, honest, and illuminating. If you have ever felt love as a mystery or wondered how astrology can uncover your truest self, this episode is for you. So, welcome, Ada. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Ada, you say astrology is less about prediction and more about self remembrance. What does that mean when it comes to how we love and seek connection?
Okay, so there's several types of ways of reading the chart. And there is the astrology that's a modern astrology that you read the movements and track the planets and can then uh, predict, let's say, depending on where the planet is. And that's very common. And then there is the evolutionary astrology, which is what I am, an evolutionary astrologer, that looks at a birth chart and it looks at it as a map of your soul's development. And um, and so what happens is that you see all these planets as archetypes, and these archetypes are pieces of you that are an integral part of you. The planets can't really make you do anything. What the planets do is that they tell you all these different movements within yourself, all these different personalities and pieces within yourself. And what I do is I show you where your power is, where your potential is, and what your path is. And that is what I do, as opposed to what other astrologers do.
Yes, that's so beautiful and wonderful. And could it be that the wrong relationships are just mirrors for the past parts of ourselves that we haven't remembered yet?
Absolutely. I actually got into this type of line of work. I was fascinated with astrology that predicted finances. I wanted to be a financial astrologer, but I had been reading professionally for 14, 15 years now, and I always got the same questions. Why can't I find the right person? Why do I end up in the same relationship? When am I going to have a healthy relationship? Why do I keep missing the mark? And so I developed this because of that, because there was this dissonance when it came to relationships. And then recently, I myself had a very powerful experience in a relationship that kind of cracked me open. And as I was developing the love map, I started to see it in a completely different way. So yes, when you meet someone and it creates tension inside of you, the challenges, the emotions, the things that really move you inside, it means that you have found a mirror. And many people could call them your soulmate, your twin flame, whatever you want to call it. I rather stay very practical and focused. I do esoteric readings, and I'm a very esoteric person, but I need to be practical. Otherwise, I can't implement what I am teaching. And when you meet somebody that really opens you up, most of us, what we do is that we are faced with the fear. And that fear comes from the attachment, from the expectation. And what happens with love is that there's this tension between fear and love, which are polar opposites. And that's when you begin to suffer. So what I experienced was that if you let go of the fear, which is not easy, when you let go of the fear and you start observing yourself and what this relationship is pulling out, your fears, your triggers, your traumas, your epigenetic traumas, you begin to notice that it's really not about the other person. It's about you. And then that's when you begin to see the transformation. So whenever you have a lover that is really triggering you, this is a mirror that is helping you evolve. Because for me, love is the point of an initiation in our path to a spiritual enlightenment. It's love.
Yeah, yeah. And that shift from blame to insight, it's so powerful and it
Yes.
reframes the heartbreak as initiation. And also, you work with planetary archetypes rather than deterministic horoscopes. How do these archetypes shapes our experience of love and emotional patterns?
Well, I look at the planets, like I said, a map. So depending on where the planet is, how it is aspected, what house it is sitting in, and the sign. And here's when it gets a bit complex because I'm a Hellenistic astrologer, which means I do astrology in the ancient way. So I have a different way of looking at the houses and the aspects. And just to give you an example, you can have somebody that has a Venus. Let's take a woman who has a Venus in Taurus, which means that's her rulership, and she feels very comfortable there. She's at home. She's in her physical pleasure, her sensuality. She's a very grounded woman. If you have a female that has this position in her chart, but for some reason she's programmed when she was young because of social reasons, she takes that Venus and treats it as more aggressive, meaning her Venus love archetype becomes an aggressive type of archetype. She will surely have issues in love because she's not honoring that part of herself. But then we have things like Venus in detriment, which means that that Venus is in a house that she's not comfortable in. So let's say that she has Venus in Scorpio, let's say, which is one of a detriment Venus, and that Venus is intense, possessive. She's not easy. She's she's extremely profound and very intense. But then somebody tells her, well, you know, that intensity in you is just too much. It scares people away. And you really need to tone it down. You really need to be a little more soft. When she does that, she's negating a part of her. And so she cannot find the correct mirror. She'll find mirrors that project back at her, the passive guy, the guy that doesn't really engage, I'm talking about heterosexual couples, the guy that doesn't really meet her where she needs to be met because she's again negating that part of hers, even though it would be considered a Venus quote unquote in detriment. When she really embraces that passion and that intensity and that penetrating energy, then she finds the correct mirror and she can then transform. And so these are just an example of what the planets do and how they interact with you. I hope that all makes sense.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's the kind of wisdom that makes astrology a soulful tool and not as a spiritual bypass only. And is there one planetary archetype that tends to trip people up the most in relationship?
Um, See, I don't see it that way because I had a very good friend who's also a life coach asked me that question. She said, "Well, if I look at my planets and these are my planets, and I'm kind of screwed." She said, "So if I have because she has Venus in Aries and she's working on her femininity." So we got into this really long discussion because she is an aggressive lover and she's had some heartbreak because she tries not to be. She tries, so you could say a Venus in, and I'm not saying that's the only love connection in the chart, but just for argument's sake, I'm using Venus as the archetype they were discussing. So I said to her, well, the more that you try to be somebody that you're not, the more you're going to trip. And she always ends up finding these very feminine men that really, I mean, she's like 6 feet tall, you know, she's beautiful. She has this gorgeous blue hair, you know, blue eyes. And so I always tell her, you have to embrace that part of her. And so it trips her because she's like, oh, I met this really nice guy and he's really sweet. And I look at him and it's like, why? He's not really mirroring who you are. So same thing goes for Mars for a woman. If the Mars is not well placed and that's her energy and her power and her passion, and she tries to bring it down or hide it. Or if she has a Mars that's more passive and she tries to be aggressive, then it, you know, we could say that one of the challenging planets would be Saturn, who is the Lord of Karma and the one that structures and limits, disciplines, makes you work hard. But Saturn is also how you commit. So depending on how you handle your commitments, and I think that when we talk about situations where you could be tripped, what I see, and this is my personal opinion, is that we live in a society that we have been or continuously told what we should be, what we need to do, what we're doing wrong, and these are programs that we have, and they're also cultural, that come up in the chart because you can see them, like in the parents, the sun and the moon. Um, and when you're programmed, there is something in you that's trying to get rid of that program. It's like a background program that is running, but it's like this noise that's in your head. But there's a part of you that knows that that is not the correct program. And I have met a lot of people that have broken free from it. They're called rebels. They have found their true identity. But I strongly believe that there is no ill-placed planet or no negative planet or no issues. There are tensions like oppositions and challenges like squares, but these are there to help you grow. If you didn't have them, then life would be boring. And we're not made for to have a boring life. Humans, we get bored.
Yeah.
We detach. So I hope that answered your question. I don't know if I went the long way.
No, 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 no. You just answered it beautifully. And thank you for sharing so much of your experience, your knowledge. This is beautiful to talk with you. And also, in a culture that often confuses love with need, how do we move toward a love that is more rooted in wholeness?
That's a very, very good question. Uh, we have a need to be wanted and a need to be desired and loved, which is natural because that's how we're wired, so we can survive. What we need is more community rather than that one person becomes everything to us. You know, our lover, our friend, our spouse, the father or mother of our children. Um, but when we engage in relationships from a space of lack of I need to be loved, I want somebody in my life to take care of me, otherwise, and we all have these voices in our head. I don't want to be alone, I want to be cherished, I want to be adored or respected or cared for, whatever that may be. When we engage in a relationship, that's a very unconscious way. It's a way of looking at quote unquote love as your savior, so you're not alone, so you don't die alone, and that's valid. But love is something that starts inside of us, and it's a very challenging light to find, especially if you've been programmed in a culture where it doesn't teach you that. I'm Hispanic, so uh, we suffer from Marianismo and machismo, which is the woman has to be the Virgin Mary and the man is the macho. And so I remember my mother when I got married the first time, because I'm married a few times, she said to me, "You do what your husband says." That was her conversation to me. And so my husband, my first husband, was a ladies' man. He's a great man. He's a great human being, but he had his eyes for the ladies. And but in my culture, it was, well, he's a man. What are you gonna do? You know. And so because you have this programming of, well, this is the way it is, and you don't want to be. My mother would tell me, you don't want to be alone. You have kids. What are you gonna do? You're gonna. So these types of programming really kind of drives us to deal with things we that don't honor us, with living in situations that we don't deserve, and staying there and suffering and kind of, because I see it so much with my clients of is he ever going to love me, or is he ever going to, is are things ever going to be good? And so when we come from that space, it's very challenging to find what I call a sacred mirror or a sacred witness, because that's what your partner is. He's not the man or the woman that comes to save you. He is the sacred mirror that helps you evolve. I learned it very late in life in a relationship that I had. And it was a blessing. It wasn't about if we were going to have a longevity or, it was about learning and that it's that. I I mean, I don't want to sound like there is no such thing as forever love, but when we think of love and relationships in terms of, because I get that a lot, when am I ever going to find my forever and ever partner, my soulmate? People are often very surprised when I say you have several soulmates in your life. And the forever love is the love that you have for yourself.
I truly agree with you. And I think especially for me also, like I'm very scared of love because I have seen my friends and my relatives going through those like that man thing, and the woman is always the uh regressive one. The man was more dominating. So I have always been like, okay, so do I need to go for a love or something? So I always in that confusion, or I'm scared that okay, will I get my soulmate in my life unless I'm not gonna date anyone. So truly. And also you offer a raw esoteric lens. What is the most challenging truth about love you have discovered through your work?
Um, the most challenging truth I've discovered through my work, is that the question?
Yeah.
I think the most challenging is that I'm responsible for my emotions. That was because you tend to point the finger at the other person, right? And when I self-observe, I have to say I'm an astrologer through and through. I mean, I do other things, but I always look at my planets and to remind me, who I am. Uh, and I realize it's not the other person that creates the heartbreak or creates the distorted feelings. It's either me accepting, me expecting, or my attachment to what in my mind would be the ideal relationship with this person. Also, we have a tendency to, because we all are incredibly intuitive, and when we connect with somebody at a very profound level, we form a like a blend. We blend with the energies of the other person. I see this a lot in women, but it happens with men as well, where we are able to see the soul of the beloved. There is something in us that allows us to see the soul. And when you see the soul of a person, you only see the magnificence of that light. So we often fall in love with the potential of that human being because we can see it. But many times that human being is not ready to live its full potential in this life or in this world of form. And we get attached to the expectation of that person evolving into that soul's ultimate potential. And that was a very harsh truth. I will share with you, I was married, my second husband, who I used to always feel that he was my soulmate and the love of my life. I completely fell in love with the potential of the soul because I could see it. And we're still connected. We haven't seen each other in over a decade, but uh, we still have a connection. I still have dreams with him. And I can see the shininess of who he is. But he was a very troubled man who had many traumas. and he was never able to make that leap. And it really, I really almost destroyed my life, because I kept thinking that I could help him evolve into this. And then I realized it's me that's doing it. It's me who keeps putting myself in emotional harm's way. And I am the one who has the expectation. It's not really him. He's really not the one hurting me. I'm the one hurting me. And that was a very harsh reality.
Truth can sting, but it can also be liberating. And you seem
Yes.
to hold both with such grace. And
Yeah.
for my listeners, if my listeners are curious about the emotional maps in their own charts, where is a good place to begin this journey of remembrance?
Well, I like to have. I mean, you do the links in the podcast, correct? Okay, I have a link to directly to my WhatsApp line. So you can reach out to me and send me a message. Tell me what's going on. If you want to book an appointment, or we can do a tea time for 15 minutes and we can have a discussion for free. And you can tell me, what's going on, and we see if a reading is good for you or not. I liked that rather than sending some. I don't have a web page. I don't like them. I'm sorry. I like the intimacy of, hey, this is what's going on, and I can reach you. Um, and yeah, so I will give you. I think you have the link to my WhatsApp. You should have the link. If not, I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I think that invitation to decode our own souls, that's the journey uh, of worth saying yes. And how do you gently guide clients to accept the truths that might first feel a little uncomfortable?
Okay, so I'll guide you more or less how I start the reading. When I start the reading, I always start with explaining to the clients that the chart is a map and that it's part of them, that it's a representation of who they are. Not It's not that the planets make you do anything. They're a connection. The moment that you were born, you chose it. You chose when you wanted to enter into this world. It doesn't matter if you were born by cesarean or you were a preemie or whatever. You chose the time that you entered. It's very important to have your time of birth, but if some people just can't locate it, we can move forward without it, because it shows us the rising. And the rising, that sign shows you which door you enter the world form through. And that energy is with you always. As you age, you become more connected to your sun sign. And your sun sign, so the rising shows us, I'm getting ahead of myself. The rising shows us how your environment was when you were born. What was going on before you had the language skills to verbalize or even understand language? The sun describes the masculine influence in your life. It could have been your father, or it could have been a father figure. And the moon is your mom. So there we start to form, it's the primal triad, which is the foundation of how you grow up. And then we move through the rest of the planets. And everything under the context of the relational in the chart. How you bond, how you care, how you receive love, how you receive care, and you give compassion, how you structure your relationships, how you commit, what you need to be committed, uh what do you need to be satisfied intimately, sexually. And then we move through how do you expand in within relationships, and then we move through that. I don't So far I haven't had any client that has told me, no, that's not the way I grew up. Some people have told me, yes, that's the way I used to be, up until the age of, but then I realized that I have come across. But and then the epigenetic trauma is always in the chart, especially for women. It comes through right away. And at the end of the reading, I do look at the transits, and there are clients that I can channel, because I work with the planets for so long, they kind of talk to me. So I can tell you, yes, there is somebody, or there was someone, or there will be somebody, but not now, or somebody is coming in now, that sort of thing. So it doesn't it doesn't work with everyone. I unfortunately with some people I can be very detailed, and with some I feel like if you need to hear the message, it'll come through in that moment in time.
Yes, yes.
I hope that
Thank
explained everything clearly.
Yes, yes, definitely. And thank you for sharing so much. And if my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Well, the WhatsApp number, and I also have Instagram, which is my name, Ada Esquerre. Very simple. I post my ramblings there, so you can go in there and look at what I post. Send me a message if they want to.
Okay, and I will make sure to attach all the details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and have a beautiful conversation with you because you're a wonderful person and your knowledge is amazing. And to my listeners, Ada reminds us that astrology isn't fate, it's a reflection, a mirror to the emotional architecture we carry, and a guide to who we can become when we honor every piece of ourselves. Love is its a truest form, doesn't complete us, it reflects the wholeness we have reclaimed. Keep gazing inward, keep remembering, and may your stars always lead you home. This is the Soul Mirror.